Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Julie for opening up her home as always. Today's class is L'ilui Nishmat David ben Julia alav shalom berachot and divrei Torah le'ilui nishmato. So there's been a lot of discussion. I don't know if anybody tuned into the Hillel TEDx event the other day. It was fascinating. Yeah, it was very nice. So a lot of discussion about happiness. And in general, we love to talk about happiness, what makes us happy, because we ultimately feel that if we have happiness and joy in our lives, we'll live more fulfilled, more content, meaningful lives. So let's begin there. What makes us happy? In general, when you had to list things in your life that make you happy, what makes people happy? Anything, yeah. What makes you happy? Family, okay, taking care of children, providing for them, yes. Hitting goals, like in a particular area, just anything. You put a goal, go shopping today, I went shopping, I feel happy. Right. No, being honest, we talked about that last week, checking things off the to-do list, like that's it's a big one. So feeling accomplishment, getting things done, right? Doing what we feel, we're responsible doing and getting it off our plate, sure. Anything else? Okay, so taking care of kids when feeling like I'm being a good caretaker, I'm educating them, or when they're happy. Every time your kids are happy, you're happy? No, I don't. There's a lot of things that make my kids happy, and I am not happy. There are a lot of times kids are happy, and I'm not happy. But I think I know what you meant. I think right. When they're older, not when they're younger. Exactly, right? When they feel fulfilled and they're leading meaningful lives, you feel like you're doing a good job. Right, exactly. Okay, right. You can see where we're at different stages of child raising. So we're thinking in different points, Julie, yes. Okay, good. Having a sense of purpose, meaning, okay? Yeah.
It's not as significant, but music makes me happy.
Okay. That is significant. Sure, music. Exercising. Good. Now we're getting into like more concrete things. We were like purpose, meaning we were in the class. Right? Yeah. I like that. Yeah, it's good. Exercising, beach, vacations, yes, traveling gives us a lot of happiness. Very nice. Okay, good. So there's a very good book if anybody's interested in reading it. It's by a professor from the University of British Columbia. Her name is Elizabeth Dunn, where she talks about how spending money on people makes people happy. When you spend your money on doing things for other people, taking other people out to dinner, buying somebody a gift, sending somebody on vacation, sending someone flowers for Shabbat. When a person takes from their own money and spends it on other people, it gives them a lot of happiness. And her research is all about how spending money on other people actually makes you happier than spending money on yourself. That when you purchase a nice pair of shoes or a new blouse or you go on a vacation, all that makes you very, very happy. But when you're able to use the money all of the markers of how we measure happiness tend to be greater than if we were spending it on ourselves. She does a nice experiment where she has, this already appears in toddlers and young children, where she has like toddlers aged 2-3 years old, sitting on a lap in a room being videoed, and she gives them treats. She gives them like goldfish or some kind of a snack in their bowl. And she says, "Oh, these are all for you." And then she takes out a little doll calls it Monkey and says, "Oh, but Monkey doesn't have any. Would you give some to Monkey?" And you see the girl take one out and put it in the monkey's bowl, and the monkey eats it, and you see the child's face like lights up. And if you compare the child's face when the child received the fish for themselves versus when the child took one of those fish and put it in the bowl and felt like they made the monkey happy, the two you can't compare the two. She has this definite sense of happiness and joy receiving, but when she puts the face just smiles and lights up, she feels like she helped somebody else, and that really gives you a sense of giving makes us very happy. One of the parents at the TEDx event said to me that the first speaker spoke about happiness and that happiness is all about investing your time, that when you use your time well, that'll give you a sense of happiness. But he was upset that the speaker didn't talk about giving, didn't talk about giving back to other people and helping other people. And I said, the truth is he did. If you feel like giving back to other people is a good use of your time, if that's how you're investing your time, you're going to feel very good about that. It's going to give you a lot of joy. But I think that I want to emphasize that idea today about how much giving to others can truly give us happiness. And then I'm going to try by the end to kind of pull it together with another issue that is, I think, affecting us a lot over these last couple of weeks. So just a couple of other statistics that Professor Dunn points out. They did a survey of over 200,000 adults in the United States. And they actually, not just in the United States, but in the world at large. And they said 1/3, which is a big number, 75, 80,000 out of them, all reported having given money to charity within the last month of having taken the survey. So think about it, 1/3 of human beings give charity, right? That's an interesting concept, right? Obviously, our Torah demands of us and gives us a commandment to give charity and to take care of the poor, but it's something that you could see is pretty ingrained into the fabric of human society, that most societies that are successful, that have meaning and fulfillment and happiness, are ones where people are giving back to others, where they're contributing in a charitable way. In every major region that they analyzed, people who gave charity were happier than people who did not give charity. They tried to measure it, and they basically measured that giving away, this is fascinating, giving away some of your money to charity is equivalent to the same level of happiness as doubling your money. So think about it. If I were to take however much money you have right now and double it, that amount of happiness that you would get from doubling is the same as if you gave your money away to other people. You contributed in a charitable way, which seems pretty bizarre, right? Giving away my money is going to make me happier than doubling my money. And the answer is yes. If a person feels like it's going to a cause and your money's working for the right things, a person will feel a lot of happiness to that. And as a result, we've adapted in society our behavior to want to go ahead and give charity. Meaning the same way when we eat food, it makes us feel good. So that's why we eat food again. When we buy something nice for ourselves, it makes us feel good. So we do that. When we contribute charitably to others, that gives us a feeling. So our brain actually wires it into our habit to want to continue to do that, to give us that feeling that we like to have when we go ahead and give charity. It's a Pavlovian type of experience, right? For sure, classical conditioning. So the question, though, that I had after seeing all of this is, why is it, though, that sometimes we do give charity and we don't have that warm and fuzzy feeling necessarily, right? Sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't. Like the other day, I got an email about, donating to breast cancer awareness, and my grandmother was a breast cancer survivor, so I always felt connected to that cause. And I saw an email and I clicked on it. I put in my credit card. I gave them $50. But I just went about my day after that pretty regularly. Like I didn't all of a sudden feel a rush of happiness and joy and excitement and I'm on top of the world for the rest of the day. And I wonder that I think many people have this type of experience when we give money, when we contribute to charity, that yes, in some cases we feel something really, really special. But I think more often than not, it's just something we do. We don't really get that same feeling. And the question is why? And I think the answer to that question will be something very, very important. Well, let's see if we get some.
I think like for example, when SBH collects around holiday time and say this money is going to feed a family on the holiday, you feel more connected to that donation. And you feel because you know exactly where it's going. But when you give to breast cancer awareness, what is it going to? Research? Is it going to somebody's treatment? Is it going, like, you don't know where it's going.
Excellent.
So I think like the vagueness of your donation makes it feel more like not like less spiritual or uplifting.
Yeah, for sure. Other thoughts? Agree, disagree? Yeah.
Sometimes you need a meaningful connection with the person, even you're handing it to them, or you're giving them a meal, or whatever it is that you're giving them.
Right.
And you see their reaction and their appreciation.
Right. Yeah. So I want to.
I was gonna say like a physical act, working to raise that money.
Mm-hmm.
throwing a bake sale instead of writing a check, or like she said, taking a meal instead of ordering a meal, or whatever it is.
So if we put all three of those things together, I think the common denominator between what we're saying is it's not just the giving that is creating the sense of happiness. What is creating the sense of happiness? It's the connection that we're creating with another person, right? It's the fact that we know our dollars that we're sending are going to do something very specific, that we can imagine in our mind that person taking that money or getting that meal and seeing the happiness on their face, or imagining the happiness on their face. And that connection is what grants us that happiness. So like you said, just donating to a cause that is somewhat, broad and vague, and I don't see where my giving is actually going or the impact that it's actually having, makes people disconnected from it and doesn't give them that same feeling. As opposed to if I know my dollars are going to something very specific that I can either imagine what it's doing, or I can actually get a concrete thing that it's doing. So for example, one of the strategies that charities use, like for example, if you're donating to an orphanage, let's say, they'll send you a picture of one of the orphans in the thing and their biography and what they're doing and where they came from. And your dollars are going to connect to this. All of a sudden you put a face to that action and you're able to imagine what it is. And you're creating a connection, even if you never actually met the person, but you have something that's connecting it to be concrete, then you feel a sense of purpose and accomplishment because you know your contribution is doing something very, very specific. So you're creating that bond, that connection with the other person that is really what is giving you that joy. So it's not just the giving, but it's the connection that is being created through that, knowing what my contribution is actually doing and what it's accomplishing and how it's bettering somebody else's experience. And Professor Dunn speaks about that because she tells the story of how she came to that realization that Canada had a program during the Syrian refugee crisis called the Group of Five, where you had to partner with 5 other families to bring a family over from Syria and to do all of the things that you needed to do in order to help them acclimate and become part of, in their case, Canadian society, their neighborhood. So they had to find them a house and then fix it up and stock the fridge and make sure they had their stuff and set aside the bedrooms and do those particular things. I think you said that I have to do something physical, right? Sometimes just writing the check, it's very impersonal, right? We don't feel that connection. And as a result, we don't get that same feeling or that same happiness from what we're doing, as opposed to performing an actual deed, going out and getting in your car and purchasing something for somebody and delivering it to their house, all of a sudden takes on a level of meaning than just sending somebody $20 via Venmo for them to go ahead and take care of it. And again, it's not that we're saying that the sending of the money isn't important or isn't a mitzvah. Chas v'shalom. It sometimes is the thing that the person needs. That's just what they need. And that's just the easiest way to fulfill that mitzvah. But definitely when we're rating the levels of giving and what's going to give us this greatest sense of purpose and meaning, it's giving that is done in a physical way where we're doing something that we can attach to, that we can be concrete, and we know what it is that we're impacting, and we can see the smile on the other person's face. It kind of flies a little bit in the face of some elements of charity, only because there are sometimes we know we're supposed to give to things anonymously, like we're not supposed to necessarily see the person whom we're giving to face, because we don't want to embarrass them, or we don't want to feel like they owe us or something like that. So there are obviously times and places when things are supposed to remain a little bit separate, when for the betterment of the person who you're giving to, you don't necessarily have to see it face to face. And in some cases, maybe we have to try to find a way to feel happy, even though we don't know for sure what it is that we're doing, just feel like we did the right thing. But human nature is such that we feel that connection, and that's that connection through our giving and our charitable contributions is what's going to go ahead and give us the happiness. And I think the rabbis mentioned this in a few places in Pirke Avot, and I want to just illustrate for you some of them very briefly. So the second Mishnah of Pirke Avot, famous line, tells us the statement of Shimon HaTzadik, and he says, Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed, on 3 things the world rests. Al HaTorah, on Torah and its observance and its study. al ha'avodah, on service to Hashem, which means prayer. In the times of the Beit HaMikdash, there were also sacrifices. Ve'al gimilut chasadim, and on acts of loving kindness. Acts of loving kindness does not mean charity in this instance. Tzedakah, righteousness and giving charity, is one thing. The rabbis here are talking about gimilut chasadim, acts of loving kindness, having that personal connection, visiting somebody who's sick, comforting somebody who's in mourning, looking for somebody who's a stranger, somebody who is from out of town, and inviting them into our house and having them stay with us and giving them a meal. You find out that someone, one of your friends is sick, and you make dinner for their family and you bring it over to their house. These are acts of gimilut chasadim. The effort it takes to do it, the personal connection, having to go out of your way for somebody else, all of that is what makes it more challenging to do, but also that much more rewarding when a person actually goes through it. And that's what the world kind of rests upon. Similarly, in the 5th Mishnah, Yosef ben Yochanan says, Yehi betcha patuach lirvacha. Make your home an open revolving door, right? This is where the rabbis quote the midrash of Abraham's tent on 4 sides, which is this week's parasha. Abraham is sitting out in the heat of the sun, recovering from his brit milah, excuse me, and he's trying to invite guests simultaneously. And he's in pain, not because of his physical suffering, but because there's no guests for him to go ahead and treat. He wanted to have his home open and be a revolving door for people to come in. So that's the way our homes are supposed to be as well. And those who are poor should be of your household. We should be employing them. We should be bringing them in to help them. We should make them feel part of our family. People are going to be reluctant to take handouts. But if somebody feels like they're your friend, if they're your part of your family, then what you help them with is not necessarily an embarrassing thing. It's not, oh, I'm feeling hazit for them or anything like that. You feel the connection, you get to know them, you feel a real closeness to those people, then they can be part of your family and you can help them in that process. So the rabbis again here are expressing to us the importance of having an open home, taking in people of all walks of life, and making sure that those who are less fortunate feel a part of our families, not just people we're taking care of, but keeping on the periphery, but rather welcoming them in, inviting them in to be a part of what we do, regardless of whatever challenges they might be struggling with. And to that end, I want to try and spend a few minutes talking a little bit about something that I've noticed our community needs a little bit of work on. At least that's my perspective, although I'll throw it out and see what you all think, because you're on the front lines of it more than me. I find our community to be a very charitable community. I find us to need a little bit of work in being a hospitable community, right? And what I mean by being hospitable, it means not inviting my best friend over to my house, right? Because that's an easy thing to do, right? I have my group, I have my core, but being hospitable is expanding that group, branching out to people that maybe are not part of my intimate social gathering, somebody who's a little bit on the periphery, somebody who I don't typically interact with, someone who might be an outsider, someone who just newly moved into the area, someone who's from a different part of the country and comes in. I think our instinct, as many people, but especially within the culture of our community, is to be hesitant to reach out to such people. Somebody moves from another spot, like somebody comes in from Texas or California, and they're new. Everybody's kind of a little standoffish because they don't know my culture, they don't know how we do things, and so people tend to resist opening themselves up to such people. We don't find, where we call ourselves the Faddal community, but I think we only say Faddal to certain people, right? We're not always Faddaling for every single person that kind of comes in because we're a little bit hesitant. And that's something that I think that we have to talk a little bit more about and be aware of, self-aware, that we can use some improvement in that area. I'll read to you the rabbi's statement in the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat that comes from this week's parasha with Avraham Avinu, because this is really a hallmark of who Avraham was and what it means to be a member of Avraham's family. The Gemara says, greater is being hospitable, is taking in guests from receiving the divine presence. What does that mean? It It means at the beginning of the parasha, God came to Abraham, and Abraham was in a conversation with God. And no sooner does that conversation with God begin, that Abraham turns and sees these three strangers walking on the side. Now, if it was any one of us, I would venture to say, although I don't want to judge anybody, that most of us would say, hey, I'm in the middle of a conversation with God. You don't just break away from a conversation with God to take care of people, not the least of which are three strangers who the rabbis actually say were Arab travelers who maybe there's a feeling of danger or whatever it is to go and help them, right? I'm in the middle of a conversation with God. And say the rabbis that Abraham turned to God and told God, wait here 1 minute, God, there's somebody else I need to tend to. He left the presence of God, left God there, so to speak, and went to go and tend to his three guests, his three physical strangers that are walking by. And Abraham goes to great lengths to treat them and to help them and to welcome them in. And by the end, what does the pasuk say? It says that God was waiting there for him, that God waited there until Abraham finished this whole process. And then it says, V'Avraham odenu omed lifnei Adonai, and Abraham was still standing before God. God waited there for him. And God, you can imagine, I'm going to say this metaphorically, was smiling the whole way, right? How does that work? How do you make sense of that? Leave God to go tend to some travelers? You're in a conversation with the divine. How does that make any sense?
Not other than him, but first.
He cares about how you treat other human beings
Before how you treat them.
Right. And can we make that make sense though? Well, why? Why would God want you to treat other people more than him? It's God, right? What?
He didn't make the world for himself.
Right.
Good. So he didn't make the world for himself. He made the world for us. He made us for him, right? Think about mashal. How could you compare this to, right? I would compare it to a parent and a child, right? Imagine we were in a conversation here and somebody's child sitting in the room was outside and needed help. I think every single person would say, stop the class in order to go make sure that that child is taken care of, right? Because a person would rather them take care of their child than even take care of themselves, right? We would say, I'm good, go take care of my kid, right? Go help my child, because your child is even more precious to you sometimes than yourself. Well, in that same vein, God says, all of human beings, all of humanity are my children. Every person is created b'tselem Elohim. God says, you can leave me, I'm fine. Go take care of my children. Go take care of the ones who I created in my image. And when you take care of them, God says, it's the same as if you took care of me. And I'll be waiting here for when you come into return. And that's what the Gemara says. I'll read to you the words. It says, Rabbi Elazar said, come and see that the ways of God are not like the ways of human beings. The ways of human beings, a smaller person does not go and tend to a bigger person. And yet, right? He says, when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when it comes to God, God says, I know I'm greater, but leave me aside. Go tend to the one who's smaller, right? God has that humility, in him, right? For us to take care of others. So, like Candy said, God wants us to take care of other people who have the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God in them, more so than even himself. And that's a very powerful statement. I think something that should resonate with us every single time. That's how God wants us to view the rest of mankind. And as a result, no matter who it is, stranger, a friend, whatever it might be, where we should be inviting, we should be welcoming, we should be looking for those opportunities to take people in. And it's not easy. It's definitely hard. Our homes are safe havens for us. We control the environment. We want to take care of our children. And it's always tenuous to bring another person, especially one that you might not know very well, or don't know what their value system is, into our home. But the idea is that if we're in control and we're taking care and we're welcoming, we bring those people in and we invite them into our world. We share our values with them. We improve them. We improve ourselves. And we improve the world as a whole. There isn't a greater Kiddush Hashem that a person can do than to take in somebody who is a foreigner and bring them in and welcome them in to the social scene, right? And that can literally make or break people. It's been a very tough sledding over the last number of years. We've watched this unfold where many families, thank God, are moving into the Deal area. And Baruch Hashem, we have a very, very warm community. But there have been some students who have come to our school have had a tough time adjusting, where people haven't been so open to taking them in, where the students kind of saw they were different, their name was different, their background was a little bit different. And it's been a struggle for some of them, to the point where we've had students, unfortunately, who have told us that they push their parents to move back. They don't want to stay. And that's heartbreaking. Some cases it's other factors, right? I don't want to paint one brushstroke for everybody. But the idea is that we have to look at that and say to ourselves, maybe we need a little bit more work on being welcoming, on being inviting, on creating that warmth that everybody talks about, not just for the people who look and sound and have the same names as us, but for other people who might be the people we don't maybe always take in. And that's something that is hard to come to a realization about. It hurts a little bit, but I think it's the reality. I think if we look around and we're honest with ourselves, it's a point that we can, I think, go ahead and improve upon. Like I said, Hachnasat Orchim, we talk about Hachnasat Orchim. At its core, Hachnasat Orchim is providing somebody with something that they otherwise could not provide for themselves. Somebody who you're giving them something that they desperately need, that you have to be able to offer them. So it's wonderful to invite neighbors and friends and family over to our houses. Don't stop doing that. Definitely continue to do that. But there also has to be a balance. We have to show our children we don't always invite the same people who think the same and look the same and talk the same and are the same. We can branch out and bring in somebody who is a little bit different and feel like we can connect with them as well. And that's something that I think we should be mindful of. I think it's something that we should make a point of emphasizing and really taking from our forefather Abraham. And I think going back to the starting point, I think that we'll be amazed to see how much joy and happiness it would give us and our children to be able to do that. It will be challenging at first. It might feel a little awkward. It might be a little bit uncomfortable. But when that ice is broken, I think when it's all over with, you're going to feel a tremendous sense of joy and happiness. I got to know people that, wow, I never knew how amazing that person was. That person's been sitting in shul 3 rows up, but I never thought in my wildest dreams we would ever get along because of X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden we came into our home, we shared a meal together on Shabbat. What an amazing person. I never knew all these things about them or about their family or their story. And that creates growth for yourself and for the community and for everybody around us. And I think that that's something that we should try and internalize and start slow to maybe go ahead and improve upon. And you're going to see that joy come because of that connection. You're going to see yourself connecting with so many new people. And that's what the joy of being a human being is really, really all about. Seeing the other, lifting them up, making them feel good, and you feeling good in the process as well. Comments or questions or things that you think might be a challenge in this perspective? What challenges could we possibly foresee here? Yes. Yes.
So when people would ask,
I don't want you to ever accept what I say and just say, well, the rabbi, yeah. Yes.
there's a little bit, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but of a fear factor
Mhm.
of if somebody new comes into town and need a place to stay. If people know them, my house was always open, I had a basement, there's a separate entrance, go in and out, but if I don't know them,
Right.
how can I let them come into I don't have God saying, hey, it's fine,
Yeah, right.
Abraham spoke Hashem,
Right.
but got saved from a furnace, you're gonna go
Right.
there, you're gonna be okay. No one's telling me it's gonna be okay.
It's reasonable, right?
People would come into your home.
Right.
Your kids running around, you're in the kitchen, they're in another room, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
There's a fear factor.
Yeah, so Candice brings up a good point, a fear factor. The world is definitely a scarier, it feels like a scarier place. I don't know if it really is a scarier place, but definitely feels like a scarier place. We know a lot more, we're seeing a lot more news, social media, things like that. It feels like a lot more like a scarier place, and that's all that really is important if it feels scarier. And I'm not suggesting that we just kind of throw our inhibitions to the wind and just take in people and be reckless. That for sure. A person definitely has the right to vet what comes in and out of their house, make sure that it makes sense, check up on things. So there's other ways I think that you can get to know somebody in a less intimate setting by which you can sort of get a sense of this is someone who I would want to get to know a little bit more personally in a more intimate setting, right? So there could be casual conversations in shul or in school or out in the community or ask, does anybody know this person? And then once you get a sense of, that fear factor is maybe not something you have to be worried about, then there's an opportunity to go ahead and to bring that person in. So sometimes it doesn't always have to be being so intimate, even bringing into your home. It could just be recognizing that person. I can't tell you how much of a difference it makes to people when they show up at shul and they're not a familiar face or they're from some other place and people go over to them and say, hey, I've never seen you here before. What's your name? Where are you from? How you doing? That in and of itself is already a version of what we're talking about over here, just recognizing that people are there. I've been in places where I've gone and nobody has come up to me. I've been a stranger in a new spot. And I've seen other people and people just walk right by you and they don't even think to ask you, who you are or what you're doing there, right? And that's disappointing. When that happens to you, if you put yourself in that shoe, you're traveling, you're on vacation, you go somewhere where a lot of Jewish people are and nobody even notices you there, that's very disappointing. It makes me feel like, all right, I'm invisible, so I guess I don't really matter. So there's, I think, ways to do this beyond just inviting somebody over for a Shabbat meal. That's kind of the example I gave. But I think we can find other ways to do this as well. Just feel like we're a more welcoming, more inviting, hosts when people are coming that aren't necessarily cut from the same cloth that we are. I think that's something to keep in mind. Yeah.
On what you just said, we talked about this, I don't know, a few months ago in class, but I think that something our community lacks is, and that something we should work on and trying to teach our children, myself included, is learning how to introduce yourself. Walking up, our kids think it's weird when you see somebody to say, hi, my name is Julie. Well, everything is weird.
Right.
Where in the American community, it's very normal.
Right.
Hi, my name is Tom.
Right.
But you'll never see our kids do that. And
Right.
I think it's something that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Focusing on having them
sometimes
work
that
on
opens
greetings.
to-
Yes.
Not that we're not welcome. We think we're gonna look strange by walking up to that
Right.
person.
Right. Maybe
It's
we're
our
our own insecurity that's going on that we don't want to introduce. We don't want to introduce yourself to somebody is to be vulnerable for a moment. It's to open up to them and to step out of your comfort zone. And that's something that's why it's called the comfort zone, because people like to be in it, right? They don't like to step out of it, right? So yeah, 100%. And especially when you consider how much the next generation is doing most of its communication through screens, it makes it even more challenging for them when they don't have those basic skills of face-to-face communication. They have a hard time just communicating face-to-face with their best friend, let alone communicating face-to-face with somebody who they don't know, right? So that's just going to get more and more difficult. And the more, I can't tell you, I think it was like 4 weeks into camp where I told my daughter, I was like, she said her counselor's name. I'm like, what's your counselor's last name? Oh, I don't know. I was like, why don't you know your counselor's last name? Like, I want to know who it is. And it took me like 6 weeks to find out that her counselor was like one of my rabbi friends' daughter. Like, and I didn't know. I had to meet him at a party where he's like, oh, my daughter's your daughter's counselor. I'm like, what? No. Like, and I was like, yeah, Lori. I was like, oh, it's Lori Eber. Oh, I didn't know that. Because my daughter didn't come home. Like, ask people their names, tell them last name. Oh, okay. I'm not asking them to say who your parents are. They're not 90, but okay, fine. Just at least give me a name so that I can have something on that. It's definitely, they struggle with that, and we could model it for them and try to emphasize it for them as well. I think that's another very big thing. I'll share with you another thing that I saw the other day, and I have a feeling I'll get some criticism for this, but I'll tell you how I felt, but I'll be vulnerable for a minute. There was a video that appeared on a number of social media platforms yesterday or 2 days ago of a homeless person who was on a porch in a house in Brooklyn, and they videoed it, and they came out and they ushered the person out. So I gotta tell you, I watched that video a number of times. Every time I watched it, I felt a little differently for it, right? It was. I read the comments, and the comments were very where that's sort of where it was at. It was a Syrian on, I don't know what street it was, whatever it is, and there was a homeless person sleeping on the porch of the house. They must have gotten out for work, and they saw the person, and they woke him up and were videoing it, and they said like, get out of here, basically. So the video didn't sit well with me. I looked at it, I watched it a number of times, and I said, something about this doesn't feel right. I get the idea that it can be incredibly unnerving, and I don't want to judge anybody. If I woke up and I saw that on my front porch, I think I would freak out as well, probably. I think my wife would definitely freak out as well. So that's a natural reaction, right? It's uncomfortable for sure. But something about seeing that video just didn't sit well with me. And then reading the comments on it also didn't sit well with me. It definitely felt like there was a coldness to it. The fact that it was even videoed and put up on social media as a use to say, vote for this Republican candidate because they'll clean this up. It just doesn't, it wasn't, huh? I don't know. It's hard to understand, to see what's real and what's not. And I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know, but real or not, even if it was staged, the fact that you would stage it and present that is still a problem to me, right? It didn't feel right. It felt unkind. It felt like I just wouldn't promote that, even if I was. Okay, I don't know that I would bring the guy into my home necessarily. Maybe I'd come out with a sandwich, is $5, go get something to eat or whatever it is, or usher them. I don't know. So some people have said that as well, right? Then they're going to come back or they're going to tell other people to come. But at the very least, I would have said videoing it and putting it on felt very cold. It felt very wrong. Obviously, this is not a situation we like. Homelessness is a heartbreaking situation, and it needs to be handled better by everybody involved. But it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like that's what Abraham Avinu would do. It just didn't feel like something that, as a Jewish person, I could put my name to. And it seemed like a lot of the comments that people were giving over there, and again, people can be crazy on social media with their comments, but felt that way as well. Like, where's the sensitivity? Where is that coming from? So I don't know. There's not a good answer. I didn't know what to feel with it. I still feel queasy about it, and I'm not sure. I just know it wasn't, something about it didn't feel right. And it called me to the idea that we've been talking about. I spoke about it on Shabbat in our shul, of the anti-Semitism that's been going around these last number of weeks, and the fact that we need to be better about Kiddush Hashem. That the thing that we need to really grab onto during this time, and it should be always, but even when the conversation is even that much more involved against us, is we need to show people the bright side of Judaism. We need to show them our values, what we stand for, what the Torah preaches, what it means to be a family of Avraham Avinu, the kindness and the love that we're meant to spread in the proper way. That just seems to be what we need to focus on more than anything else, right? And breaking down that heartlessness that sometimes we all can experience and we all can have. And I think the more Kiddush Hashem we spread, the greater things will be. And that was what was, I think, bothered me, is what would our kids say about that video? What extent are they going to go ahead and take it to? What environment are our children being brought up to think about the people of the world? How do they look at other outsiders that they come in contact with? And that is why we have these issues when we go away on vacation and when we interact with other people, because our children just don't have that skill set and it's not being talked about enough, and we're not doing a good enough job of role modeling it for it. And this could be maybe one area that we can improve upon, that I think could have a ripple effect towards our children and the next generation, of seeing how we can treat people who are not always like us. Again, I'm not suggesting we pull homeless people off the street and have a Shabbat meal with them. Maybe that's a little extreme, but we can take other measures to be better at it. We don't have to go to the opposite extreme of being so insulated and so bubbled to the point where we're not experiencing that happiness and that joy of giving to others and making that Kiddush Hashem, because we're so guarded and afraid all of the time. So I think it's a balance, like everything else. I think it's a balance, and knowing ourselves and knowing what we can and cannot do, and trying to take baby steps towards breaking down some of those barriers to experience that joy of giving, of hospitality, of connection with other human beings, of feeling good for making a difference in someone else's lives that you could really put a thumbprint on, right? And you can really feel, I did something positive today. That when our head hits the pillow and our children's head hit the pillow, you could point to an action and say, I really made a difference in someone else's life today that I wouldn't ordinarily have done otherwise. And those are experiences that I think we have to try and feel a little bit more, and it takes us breaking out of our shell to be able to do it.
Have to be taught to respect others, no matter if they're maids or people taking out the garbage or whoever
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
Just to be respectful. towards them.
Respectful to other people and have in mind that this is a person of value, right? I think sometimes we just don't see the value in certain people because we're blinded to it. We think I'm paying, I'm on vacation, it's me. And as a result, what this person is not, deserving of my respect. And they're not saying that out loud, but their actions are speaking that mentality, that sense of entitlement, and modeling it for them is very important. Michelle, you wanted to say something?
This topic, I was talking about in shul. I find that like I cringe a lot when some men go up to Abot and people from out of town and like they walk back and there's barely a hand to shake. And then there's other people, there's like 40, and like, I feel like that's the person everybody should be standing up.
Great. Great,
And
100%.
I was like, when you're sitting with your sons, for them to see that, the more for them to see that you're standing,
Right.
not for.
Maybe the person who's not the most popular person in the, everybody makes an effort to treat him the same way they would treat everybody else. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Julia, I wanted to say.
No, I think the kids really have to understand the most, and it really is that you push Hashem when you're on vacation, or there's a new teacher in school, or you're in the store, if somebody knows that you're Jewish, it's even more so, more important that you treat them respectfully and they see the way that you carry yourself. There really is a ripple effect with that.
No question.
You don't know where it's about.
I think our youth don't realize how many of those interactions they really have every single day. They feel like we're in school, everyone around us is all Jewish. So they're not mindful of the fact that when they go to Target, that's a big opportunity. When they go to any store in the community, they're interacting with not only the people behind the counter, but also the other patrons who are in the restaurant, who are in the store, who are buying, to be respectful of their right to shop peacefully and not have to feel like there's loud noise and clothes are getting thrown all over the place. There is, to a degree, a sense of, we feel like if I'm, that customer is always right mentality. So the customer is always right makes sense from the perspective of the shopkeeper. They should say to themselves, it's my job to service and please the customer. But when the customer keeps telling themselves the customer is always right, and they're using that as a way to legitimize abuse for the other people, that's not okay. That's when it's not acceptable. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
don't have to do that. I think.
Right.
That I said,
Right.
no,
Have to do that.
Right.
like that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's those little things that I think we all do here and there that need to get more attention and need to be taught to other people, and never take for granted that just because we do it, our children are going to do it, or their friends are going to do it. And we're always not around our children. Sometimes they're with their friends. So they're going to pick up on some bad habits that their friends are going to have. And we have to double down on the positive habits and let them know to be mindful of what's going on around them. I think it's very key. Marilyn, you want to end this off? Go ahead.
As I say, I think the point that you made before, that each person has their own Elohim, is such a great point, because if you want to be respectful of Hashem, that means you have to also acknowledge the fact that there's a Elohim in everyone. So you have to be respectful of Hashem. That means you're respectful of everyone.
It's the number one principle. I think that if you're talking about Ben Adam Lachavero and how you treat people and how you look at the world, just having a consistent mindfulness of Tzelem Elokim in other people means knowing that people are in the image of God, knowing that people have been created by God, and all human beings. We read in the very first parasha of the Torah that God says, I'm creating mankind, not just Jewish people, but mankind with the image of God, with the divine image, which means everybody's here for a reason. Everybody has godliness in them and has to be treated as such. And that can never be overstated, in my opinion. That's being mindful of that is the key to being a good person, ultimately. I think it's as simple as that, but it's hard to implement. It's hard to
One's in bed rest, and I was there for 2 weeks, and everyone looks the same. Everyone's in a gown, and I was talking to one of the nurses. She's like, something I forgot. I was there on Shabbat. She's like, "Oh, you're Jewish?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why don't you think I'm Jewish?" Like, "Because you're talking to me. You're looking at me." I'm like, "What does that mean?" She's like, "The other night they won't look up." Yeah, thank you. Go. Like they won't look at if they're not Jewish. She's like, "So I didn't know you were Jewish."
Yeah. Fortunately, we have a lot of
Yeah,
unfortunate stories. But our job is to try and correct for that, and to try to break some of those stereotypes, and understand that in every group there's always going to be good apples and bad apples, and
But it was just-
it's always that way. I would always say to tell our students and tell our children to approach every interaction as if this is the only interaction that person will ever have with a Jewish person. If you think about it that way, this person who I'm about to, the hostess at a restaurant, the bellhop on a vacation, whatever it is, think about it for a minute, that person, it may be the one and only time in their entire life that they ever interact with a Jew, which means that their whole impression of Am Yisrael will be formed based on the interaction that you have. That's a pretty daunting thing to think about. It could be overwhelming, but if that's sort of where our mind has to kind of be, because that will push us to say, I cannot, it lives and dies by me. And the impact is felt far and wide. Who knows where that bellhop will eventually go, where his kids will go, because maybe he teaches his kids about Jews and that kid becomes the prime minister of a country. I have no idea. Somebody said that bomb, the threat that they had from that person, he wrote in the article, he was bullied by Jews. So he wanted to go and attack Jews. That's what it was. We're talking about it all the time. I think it's everybody. We're talking about it all the time, for sure. We spoke about it on Shabbat. We've been talking about it consistently, for sure. Yes. Yeah. Everywhere. Yeah.
And woman turned to him, she goes, "You part of a handicap?" And she came in limping. And he goes, "But you did. I know you did. I saw you." And he was like, "Sorry." She's like, "Are you sorry?" And she's limping, and he no remorse.
Right.
And it's like
Unfortunate.
And unfortunately, because he's in a black pants, white shirt, and
Yeah, I think we all project that image. They all project. But if you present yourself as standing for those values as we do, you have to live by those values. You have to live by those values. You're right. She was right. It's unfortunate. You hope that people don't say that this is what it's always going to be, but we have to always be working on it. All of us have the horror stories. All of us have the great stories. All of us have those moments where we try to create more of that and spread more awareness about that. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.